Hi, this is Carol Pope.
Hi, I'm Kevin Staples.
And you're listening to Rainbow Country
with Mark Tara.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the persons appearing on the program.
Today on Rainbow Country, coverage of the 47th Toronto International Film Festival continues with Moonage Daydream, the multimedia documentary on David Bowie from Oscar-nominated filmmaker Brett Morgen. And This Place, a queer love story about two women living in Toronto and dealing with difficult family legacies. Plus, Something You Said Last Night, a slice-of-life movie about a family on vacation, all seen through the eyes of the eldest child who happens to be trans. All that and more coming up on episode 320, so stay tuned for Gay Talk Radio right here on Rainbow Country.
Hello, my name is Conchita.
And I'm Barbecue.
And my name is Hardcora. And we are the Beat Girls.
You're listening to
Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Well, hello and welcome to a brand new journey through Rainbow Country. As I like to call it, a little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond. And as always, I am your tour guide through Rainbow Country. I'm producer and host, Mark Tara. By the way, Rainbow Country originates from CIUT FM in Toronto and now proudly in syndication on 12 outlets across Canada, from coast to coast to coast. The Yukon, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the east coast of Canada, in Newfoundland, Ontario, even down to Buffalo, New York, and online. Well, thanks to you tuning in, streaming, downloading, but ultimately listening. Together we continue to build Rainbow Country into a nationally syndicated gay radio show, a #1 LGBT podcast on Podomatic.com's Gay and Lesbian chart, as well as being recognized as Canada's #2 LGBT podcast on feedspot.com. So today, 3 films that I saw at TIFF 2022. We'll hear from the filmmakers themselves about their current projects. Projects like Moonage Daydream, a multimedia documentary about the one and only David Bowie. We'll hear from Oscar-nominated filmmaker Brett Morgen. By the way, Moonage Daydream is currently out right now in theaters globally. And This Place, a queer love story about two women living in Toronto and dealing with difficult family legacies. We'll hear from filmmaker VT Naini and cast member Priya Guns. Plus, Something You Said Last Night, a slice-of-life movie about a family on vacation, all seen through the eyes of their eldest child, who happens to be transgender. We'll hear from the award-winning filmmaker, Luis de Filippis. Plus, in hour 2, music from LGBT artists, independent artists, voices that we've come to know and love in classic disco, classic 80s, classic house, and on this episode, I'm featuring some classic Spandau Ballet, some Irene Cara, and more. All that lies ahead as we start off this journey 320 through Rainbow Country, and our first stop, what I'm calling the Rainbow Country School for Canadian Gay History, and today's lesson from activist, historian, and author Tim McCaskill, what it means to be part of a community.
When we talk about the LGBTQ community as if it is something that just exists, I think we're indulging in wishful thinking. Communities aren't something that spring fully formed from the ether. They require some assembly. They need to be constructed. Still thinking about the 70s here, when I came out in Toronto, there were lots of different parts that didn't quite fit together. First, there were gay men who went to bars and baths. Most were pretty deeply in the closet. They shared a dirty secret and some overlapping friendship networks, but not much else. Then there were a self-proclaimed clutch of young activists around the body politic and the Gay Alliance towards equality, myself included, who tended to be a bit judgmental about anyone not properly out and willing to throat ram. In fact, one writer to the body politic called us the high-principled Jesus Christ farts of the movement. Then there were the new class of gay entrepreneurs who were establishing the first gay businesses along Church Street. The Community Homophile Association was perhaps the largest organization in town, and it was run by George Hislop, a part owner of several of these businesses. The entrepreneurs saw the activists as troublemakers rocking a precarious boat, and we saw them as conservatives unable to embrace gay liberation. We felt much the same about MCC, the major gay-focused Christian organization at the time. When women from Chat, calling themselves the Cunts, broke off and denounced Hislop as a sexist in 1971, it made clear that a lot of women were also on a pretty different wavelength. Most lesbians were much more comfortable in feminist circles than hanging around with gay men. Not that they all agreed either. There were always the lesbian socialist feminists versus the radical feminist lesbians, and so on. Trans organizing was small and generally had little to do with any of us. Trans men were often concerned with distinguishing themselves from lesbians, and trans women were unwelcome in most lesbian spaces. Gay men were generally suspicious, unclear on the differences between sexual orientation and sexual identity. So it was all a bit of a hot mess. I suppose if you see community like a dysfunctional family where everybody fights all the time, you could call it a community. But if by community you mean people who are cooperating and fighting for a common goal, that probably didn't really happen until the 1980s, when we were all faced with challenges that we couldn't overcome alone. This is Tim McCaskill, a gay liberation dinosaur from another planet and author of Queer Progress.
Hi, everyone. This is Mark Tewksbury, Olympic champion, leader, humanitarian. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
So during TIFF 2022, the first in-person TIFF in 2 years, I caught up with some filmmakers to talk about their films. Up next, award-winning filmmaker Louise de Filippis talks about her latest movie, Something You Said Last Night. Louise de Filippis, hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am well. Did I say your name correctly?
You did.
Yay.
Yay.
One for me.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for being here, to have your voice, your story be heard by the LGBT community and beyond. So thank you for that, Louise. Especially to talk about your film, Something You Said Last Night.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, how are you feeling that the film is out and people are seeing it?
Well, the premiere is tomorrow, so I feel like it hasn't hit me yet. It's been just like a lot of running around, doing interviews, talking about the film. But tomorrow is really when it's going to flip around and people are going to start talking about the film. So yeah, so far it's been me talking about the film. Very soon it's going to be other people talking about the film.
And you're going to see it with an audience.
And we're going to be seeing it with an audience, yeah.
Excited? Intimidated? Apprehensive?
Excited, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Good.
Ask me again tomorrow and I might change my answer. We'll see.
So you wrote this film, you directed this film, you co-produced this film. Talk to me about the story that you're telling in Something You Said Last Night.
Yeah, so the story follows a woman, she's a trans woman, and her vacation with her immediate family, her mom, her dad, and her sister. And they basically go away for a week, and we kind of just follow them as they kind of get on each other's nerves, love each other, hate each other, but ultimately support each other. It's ultimately like a universal family story, I think. It's really, I think, a story about a woman kind of in the throes of like a quarter life crisis, and kind of coming to terms with being your parents' child while still trying to be an adult. Yeah.
The mother is quite a character.
Yes, she is. Yeah. She's feisty.
What inspired you to write this story?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just came from a place of needing it and wanting it and not seeing it. I think a lot of the stories we see about trans people, trans women specifically, really have their transitions at the center of the story. It's really about the mechanics of transition, or it's about coming out. It's about the family coming to terms with it. And I really am just so sick of those stories, and I don't see any other stories being told. So that's kind of where I started with this. I made something that I wanted to see.
They often say, write what you know. So how much of you is in Something You Said Last Night? How much of your personal story is in this movie?
I think I'm all over it. I mean, it's hard not to be.
The main character is Rhea.
Sorry?
The main character's name.
Renata.
Ren.
Yeah.
Are you? Is that basically you?
I wish I could be Renata.
Okay.
In my strongest moments, maybe I'm Renata.
Okay.
I think she's such a power, she's such a force, and I think Carmen really brings that out of her. When we were casting, I really wanted someone who understood the power of silence, who really knew that even though Ren sometimes doesn't speak a lot, it doesn't mean she's not saying anything. She's saying a lot in her silence. And Ren, I think, is quite a powerful character for that. And Carmen brought that out of the character. And I am someone who is comfortable with silence, but I think I could have more power in the silence.
True. Very true. The title, Something You Said Last Night, where does that come from?
I mean, I would love to say that, I thought about the title and I really ruminated over it, and it comes from a specific moment. It doesn't. It just was something that I thought sounded nice, and I needed to call it something other than Untitled and submit it to financiers. But it does open the door for a lot of conversations, because a lot of people are asking, well, what was said on that night?
I know.
And
what was said on what night?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting that everyone has their own take on it. So, I'm happy if people are leaving the cinema talking about it. Job done. Yeah. Job well done, I think.
So you are an award-winning filmmaker. Your films have played in Toronto, in Rotterdam, in London. Your 2017 short, Nona Anna, won the Best Short Narrative Award at the Atlanta International Film Festival. You won the Special Jury Prize at Sundance. Well done.
Thank you.
How does that make you feel? Being an award-winning filmmaker.
Yeah.
Hey.
I guess it feels correct. No, it feels like...
Does it make you feel like you're on the right track?
It does. It does make me feel like I'm on the right track. It makes me feel like people are appreciating what I'm doing, and they're seeing something in the stories I want to tell.
And it's resonating.
Exactly, it's resonating.
What got you into filmmaking in the first place?
I mean, I would say that storytelling has always been part of my upbringing, from my great aunts and my
Do you come from a family of filmmakers?
No, I don't. Okay. I come from a family of laborers, I would say, and immigrants, but storytelling was just kind of intrinsically part of growing up, shelling beans around the table and people telling stories about the old country and everything. So I think it's kind of encoded into my DNA. But when I figured out that film was the medium of choice was in grade 11. We had kind of a film crash course, I guess, for a month, and that in tandem with going to see Marie Antoinette by Sofia Coppola in theaters, I think the two experiences just really stuck with me. Specifically, Marie Antoinette just because here was this story about this woman that was so removed from my life, but through film, so Sofia Coppola was able to transmute the story and make it relatable to me, you know, a 16-year-old. And I could see like, oh, she's kind of like a pop star. She's kind of like the Paris Hilton of her time. And it was the first time I had seen something like that. And it was the first time I had really seen a movie be more than just a movie. I saw it as art, and I was like, I want to do that. I want to be able to like transmute experiences and have them touch people.
The Trans Film Mentorship Project. What is this project?
Yeah, so it's a mentorship that we started on my set. So basically what we did is we ran a mentorship and we invited 5 trans youth from the community who were interested in filmmaking but didn't necessarily have any background in filmmaking, and they were part of pre-production and production, and they were kind of like intrinsic members of the crew. And we ran another iteration of it on the HBO show Sort Of, which just wrapped in June. And we're getting ready for a 3rd iteration on the upcoming Jackie Shane documentary. And really what it is, it's a program that makes space for trans voices in the industry in a proactive and tangible way. So yeah, I'm really happy to see like how the seed of an idea has grown and blossomed. And
is it something that's ongoing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still continuing. And we're doing a Trans Film Summit this coming Sunday, so we're kind of making space in the afternoon. It'll be an afternoon of panels, discussions, and just space to talk about like trans storytelling and the future of trans storytelling and our victories, our difficulties. And T.S. Madison will be there too and accept an award, which is very cool. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, speaking of difficult, you are part of the LGBT community. You're a trans individual. How easy or difficult was it to make this film? Something you said last night.
It definitely had its challenges, and I think I went into it a little bit naive. I think, you know, there are a lot of discussions about diversity and inclusion. But what I think the missing puzzle piece in that is the discussion about equity. And so sometimes being equal doesn't always mean that it should be fair. If you really want marginalized voices to have a leg up, then that might not look the fairest on paper, but that's the way that you ensure that it happens, much like the mentorship program.
Were you getting any sort of pushback in regards to the story that you were telling in this movie from, say, studios or producers, that sort of thing?
Yes, 100%. Yes.
They wanted you to do what, potentially?
There were a lot of notes about wanting to see Ren's transness in a more obvious way, wanting it to be talked about. I mean, it's never really discussed in the film. I don't think the word trans is even mentioned once.
It's just there.
It's just there because that's who she is. And it's not like she walks around talking about being trans all the time, especially with the people she's the closest to. So yeah, there were discussions about like wanting to see that a little bit more. There were even discussions about like aging her down because, you know, a woman in her mid-20s is just like not as marketable as like an 18-year-old would be.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So yeah, there were a lot of difficulties. That being said, the financiers that ultimately did come on the projects were the ones who read the script and basically were like, yes, and with like no notes, and we're just like, yeah, we're on board.
Yeah. So my last question for you, what do you hope audiences come away with after they've seen something you said last night, after they've seen this film? What do you hope audiences come away with from your film?
I hope they just come away seeing themselves. I hope they come away seeing their families. I hope they come away feeling like they're the 5th family member on this vacation. To me, again, this is a universal story. It's a story about a woman on vacation and a woman who's an intrinsic member of her family. She's a daughter, she's a granddaughter, she's a sister, and she's a trans woman second. And that's what I hope people take away.
Well said, well said. Well said, well done, well made, Louise DeFilippis. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. It's really nice chatting.
By the way, something you said last night won the TIFF Next Wave Selects Award. So congrats to all involved.
I'm Brian Bradley, author of Outrageous Misfits, female impersonator Craig Russell and his wife, Lori Russellidi. You are listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Terra.
Up next, filmmaker VT Naini and cast member Priya Guns joins me to talk about the new Canadian film, This Place.
So, what's your story?
I just moved here and I'm still adjusting to city life and I'm looking to connect with some family.
What's the matter?
Something is up with you, I can tell.
Can you imagine just being okay with being forgotten or unacknowledged?
Disappearing feels good sometimes.
I think I'm learning to make room for forgiveness.
Who are you trying to forgive? I shouldn't be the one feeling for the both of us.
Why can't you just understand I'm not ready?
I really don't want to lose you, especially now.
Hi, VT.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am well. Priya, hello. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I am good. I have to say thank you both for being here to have your voices, your stories be heard by the LGBT community and beyond, especially to talk about your new film, This Place. VT, let's start with yourself. You co-wrote, you co-produce, you direct this film. Talk to me about the story that you're telling in This Place. What's the story that you're telling?
The story of This Place, I think, is multifold. I think one is, for those of us living in Canada, or what we call Canada, and those of us living in Toronto, and we've arrived here as immigrants and refugees, what is our relationship to Indigenous and responsibility to Indigenous communities is a question that we're asking and hoping that people reflect on. That's a major theme in the film, and what conversations aren't being had, and how can they be happening. I think the other one is, what happens when we fall in love, but real life in other areas of our lives is still happening. And so, yes, these two young women of Gawiniosta and Malay are falling in love for the first time. And at the same time, we want people to ask, what happens when that's not enough, when other things get in the way and you have to tend to other aspects of your life. So I think the major themes of, migration, displacement, relationships to Indigenous communities, and what is love in the face of the rest of your life are major themes that I hope people look carefully at.
And Priya, it's Priya, correct?
Yes, it's Priya.
And Priya, for yourself, the story that you're telling in this movie, how do you see the story that you're telling?
I haven't seen the film yet. I'm seeing it tonight. And we did most of the filming in 2019. But what, I guess to respond to your question, I'm really excited about seeing for myself as well a Tamil queer person. Of course, we exist and our stories have been told in different ways, but to see this particular story and the nature of what it is set here in this place is really exciting for me. Because we're not just dealing with a Tamil queer person, but somebody who is going through a lot. Also, I feel she's working class. She's dealing with, I would say, the consequences of being broke as well. And that's never said, but it's something that me playing Malay, I know very well in terms of the relationship she has with her brother. There's so many different layers to this film that makes it exciting. And yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it tonight.
You just mentioned that you haven't seen the film yet. How excited are you?
Oh my God, I am so excited. And when we're having these interviews, knowing that other people have seen it and hearing the things that they're saying about it, I can't wait. I bought a pack of tissues. It's in my bag. I'm ready. I told my makeup artist I want waterproof mascara. On so many different levels is exciting because I've never seen myself on the big screen. And then again, being in it's sold out theater, knowing that there are some friends and family and other folks who will connect to this film on so many levels. Like, I think it's just going to be tears on different seats. We're going to leave puddles on the floor. It's going to be fun.
So, VT, you co-wrote the story that you're telling in this place. Where did the inspiration for the story come from?
Yeah, I mean, Priya and I are both Tamil, and we come from, what the world knows as Sri Lanka. And, our families have been displaced as part of a larger displaced diaspora, many of whom are refugees or were refugees, however they identify. And so I'm sure folks remember in 2009, the Tamil protests globally against the genocide of Tamil people in Sri Lanka. In that time, I started thinking about what does it mean for us to protest as Tamil women globally, or choose not to protest, and why. And so in 2013, I was doing grad school research and talking to a close family friend, Darshika Selvasivam, who asked a really, I think, life-changing question for me that was the inspiration for this film, but also made me kind of reflect on and reconcile with my own complacency and erasure, which is, what does it mean to protest on Indigenous land that's been stolen for a homeland elsewhere that's also being denied to us and we don't have control over. And that question, one, it showed me how much I didn't know about Indigenous communities here, how much the education system has failed us in so many ways. Also made me reflect on how much I lacked a relationship, an active one, a solidarity-based relationship with Indigenous communities. So, as a filmmaker and artist, I wanted to tell a story or help tell a story. I wanted to work with an Indigenous writer. I had a very naive, very simple story idea, which is two young women one of whom is a daughter of a refugee, and I had decided she would be Tamil because I'm Tamil, and a woman who is Indigenous. I didn't know which community she'd come from, and I was hoping to write with an Indigenous writer. And then I met Devry Jacobs, who is from Ganawage and is Mohawk and Yakahaga, and comes from Ganawage, grew up on the res. We met through mutual friends, started talking about this story. And then Goshan Abdumole, who's a really good friend of mine and I've known for a long time and since doing community work, she is a refugee, and her parents and her came as refugees from Iran via India. And she and I had been talking a long time about our own family's experiences with being displaced. And we just started having conversations, and what was a story about friendship evolved into a story that's of two women who are friends, who are falling in love, but also how are they navigating and grappling with their family histories and legacies and the influence of those histories on their present lives. And it was a film that took a while. It had one idea in the beginning and became something completely different, and so much more complex and nuanced through the collaboration of three writers. And the inspiration still remains what can we do to better our relationships with Indigenous folks and our relationship and responsibility to Indigenous communities. And, Priya has said so eloquently that I won't say it as well as her, but, what is our relationship to this land as well? And I hope that folks go away from it asking the same questions that we did at the beginning, and hopefully finding more pieces and parts of that to answer that question.
So, Priya, for me, after seeing the film, I think that at the heart of the film is a relationship between two women. Your character, Malay, and your co-star's character, Connie Yosa. I believe is how you say the character's name.
Yosa.
Well said. So here's the question. What drew you to be part of this story? Why did you want to be part of telling this story?
Well, initially I got the casting via social media, and I knew it was a queer love story. And for me, that was the first and only thing I knew, besides the fact that there was a Tamil character and then a Mohawk, half Mohawk, half Iranian character. That was very intriguing in itself, and I knew could only exist here. But the queer element for me was exciting on another level, because at that time I hadn't really come out. And even though my main craft, I suppose, is as a writer, and I've expressed my queerness through my writing, but my family, I don't have to worry about my family reading that. So being in a film as a queer person, there's no escaping your queerness sometimes. And in a way, it was kind of scary, but also exciting, because it felt like it would be a visual coming out. So like tonight, I'll have family and friends and some people who I've never had these conversations with, because you're constantly coming out as someone who is queer, you know? And it's not even like people are owed an explanation from us. It's just, here we are. This is my reality. That's it. Deal with it. But that can be really difficult, especially when you're brought up in an environment where, you know, there is homophobia. Even though queerness is actually so much a part of Tamil culture, like historically, I think because of colonialism and where for my family being quite Christian, it was something that I couldn't really be open with and honest about. So yeah, that was really exciting for me to say to myself that this is a visual coming out. And by the time, I actually didn't tell my parents. My mom is a Google wizard, and she brought it up because I've written a book, and it's also there's a queer element to that too, and a love story. So we had a conversation after her Googling, and yeah, that was like 6-7 months ago, and now she's going to see it. So yeah, it's exciting, but terrifying.
I hear you. I have one last question. And VT, I'll pose it to yourself. What do you hope audiences come away with after they've seen this place?
I really hope that folks, number one, have questions and want to have a conversation, and maybe want to go home and do their own reflections about the stories that they've just been witness to, and the conversations that have been had in the film. Like, how does that spark your own conversations after leaving the film? And I also want people to walk away knowing and feeling that it's a privilege to be let into our story. That's not often, and unfortunately, and hopefully we get a chance to do this more, that you get to see these stories on screen, but especially not these stories on screen together. And I want folks outside of our communities, you know, BIPOC communities, outside of LGBTQ plus communities, to look at this film and recognize and honor that it's a privilege that we've allowed you into our families, our communities, and our stories to be amongst us, and that you respect and honor that privilege. I really hope people don't just take it as a romance. It is a beautiful romance, but it's also such a nuanced and complex story that I hope people hold respect and reverence for.
Well said. VT, Priya, thank you both for your time. Well said, well done, and well made.
Thank you so much. Have a good night. Take care.
So, what's your story?
I just moved here, and I'm still adjusting to city life, and I'm looking to connect with some family.
What's the matter?
Something is up with you, I can tell.
Can you imagine just being okay with being forgotten or unacknowledged?
Disappearing feels good sometimes.
I think I'm learning to make room for forgiveness.
Who are you trying to forgive? I shouldn't be the one feeling for the both of us.
Why can't you just understand I'm not ready?
I really don't want to lose you, especially now.
By the way, keep a lookout for this new Canadian film when it comes to screens near you.
Hi, I'm writer Adam Smith, author of Deep Sniff, A History of Poppers and Queer Futures. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Up next, Oscar-nominated filmmaker Brett Morgan talks about his latest documentary,
Are you there, David?
Moonage Daydream.
You're aware of a deeper existence.
Are you there, David?
Maybe a temporary reassurance that indeed there is no beginning, no end. And you find yourself struggling to comprehend a deep mystery.
This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade. And the papers want to know whose shirt you wear.
Ever since I was 16, I was determined we'd have the greatest adventure that only one person could ever have.
I'm an alligator. I'm a mama papa calling for you. I'm the space invader. I'll be a rock and roller bitch for you.
And how about the shoes? Are those men's shoes or women's shoes or bisexual shoes? They're shoes, silly.
What's your fantasy?
Bowie.
Brett Morgan, hi, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I am well. I have to say I am much better now that I am speaking with you, especially to talk about your new documentary, a documentary on David Bowie, Moonage Daydream. Let's start here. To me, this is a multimedia experience on David Bowie. Talk to me about the story that you're getting at, the story that you're telling in Moonage Daydream.
Well, it's interesting, you see, because I wasn't interested per se in the motivating force behind this film was not a narrative, and it wasn't biographical. It was more inspired by creating a kind of a David Bowie experience. It's like rather than building a theme park ride in every town, we're just kind of taking over those cinemas. So that's kind of where this all started, with just kind of creating a space for audiences to have an engagement with David. It ended up becoming a sort of mythical journey through David's creative and spiritual journey through life. It's fashioned, ironically, a little bit kind of like a hero's myth, in the sense that David is constantly creating challenges and storms for himself to sort of test himself. But ultimately, it's really kind of a roadmap for how to lead a creative and balanced and fulfilled life in an age of chaos and fragmentation.
So we have concert footage, we have interviews, we have music, we have animation. All these elements are like jigsaw puzzles that are telling this narrative, this experience. How did you settle on all of those elements and even more?
Well, David's through line is so to step back, I screened through, we had access to everything in the David Bowie archive. And then we went out and spent several years going around the world collecting all known media related to David. And when I screened through it all, the through line emerged very quickly. David, and it was stated by David time and time again, which was transience and chaos and fragmentation are his through line. So it was once that was sort of established, what I did was I kind of broke that down into different components, be it spirituality or his recording process, or being kind of living in transit, gender fluidity. There were several different sort of factors that went into exploring that sort of overarching theme. And the movie incorporates all known Bowie media. So it's dance and film and music and all kind of mixed into this kind of kaleidoscopic fantasia.
What is he? Man? Woman? What is this? Ladies and gentlemen, David Bowie. Within the first 15 minutes of this film, we see David Bowie talking about his being bisexual. You just talked a bit about going across the globe to find footage of David Bowie. Did anything interesting or surprising come to you as a result of finding all these various footage files? Did anything surprise you?
David Bowie's, I think, one of the most fascinating talents to embark on this sort of exploration with. I'm going to say that basically every moment for the 2 years that I screened through footage was illuminating, fascinating, revealing. The only time I might have got bored was a little bit in the watching like my 90th Glass Spider tour concert, but short of that, I found him endlessly fascinating. And watching David Bowie he's like one of the most beautiful humans that's walked the earth during my lifetime. So there's that on top of everything else. But to give you something specific, the two things that really leaped out at me were very kind of macro moments. One was I was watching an interview with him once from like 87. And when David started out, all the rock critics and rock writers were kind of like on his wavelength, and they knew his sources of inspiration and they could speak all the reference points. And then he got into the 80s and suddenly he's talking to reporters who really didn't really understand him. People, from Entertainment Tonight and whatnot. And I was watching this one interview with this kind of daft reporter, journalist. And I was like, oh God, this is going to be awful. She clearly has no idea who he is. And during the pre-roll to that interview, David engaged her in this lovely conversation about the books he'd been reading. And this is all off camera. And the books that he wanted to know what she'd been reading. And I looked at that moment and I said, man, this is incredible. This guy sees every moment as an opportunity for an exchange. And he is constantly present in every moment. He's someone who had an appreciation for the brevity of life from the start. There was a moment really early on in my process where I was taken into his, Tony Visconti, David's longtime producer, took me into his recording studio to play me the raw tapes for a song called Signet Committee from 1970. And towards the end of the song, David sings, I want to live, I want to live, I want to live. And Tony ISO'd all the music, and I could hear David sobbing uncontrollably as he said this. And David was like 18 at the time. And he was crying like a man who's on his last day on earth. And that was also incredibly illuminating because it was, we think, and we've been, I think, sort of saying in the film that, as you get older, you gain an appreciation for the brevity of life. But David kind of understood that from the very beginning and went about having, one of the most adventurous and creative and fulfilling lives of anyone in, the 20th century.
Before you started this film, were you a fan of David Bowie?
Oh God, yes. Fan is such a, I get, Fan has so many different components.
Had you met him before in person?
Yeah. Hold on a sec. That's a stretch going, are you a fan to have you met him, right? Because I didn't meet him because I was a fan. I met him through work, but I was if I could say for a minute as being a fan, David was the first artist that I curated on my own, meaning prior to that, I was 11 or 12 when he entered my life. And I like to joke, I don't know what came first, Bowie or puberty, but they kind of had this, they kind of had the same impact of kind of like changing everything that I knew. And so I'm 53. So when I was 12, it was Scary Monsters and Ashes to Ashes. And, you know, he came into my life at a point, and, you know, this is no internet. So at that point, there was, he was kind of my introduction to culture, to like Bertolt Brecht, to William Burroughs, to all sorts of worlds outside of my limited one. And he was, I think, and he served this role for like so many of us, where, you know, at that moment where you feel like, you know, strange and different, and you don't understand why you're not like your parents, and all these questions we have at that point about our identity. I think David was there even when I was 11 or 12 to basically tell us that our differences were our strengths. And there really weren't a lot of people kind of waving that flag. So David represented so much to me, you know, freedom and intellect and grace and, you know, sexuality, of course. And so he had a huge impact on me at that age. I met him in 2007 to discuss doing a kind of hybrid nonfiction project that unfortunately it would have required him shooting for like 40 days, and he had sort of retired by that point. But it was, you know, my impression of him reflected back now of meeting with him was exactly kind of the same as what I got from the footage, which was he was entirely present. Like there was nothing else happening in the world. He was totally locked in and engaged. And yeah.
Brett, I have two last questions for you. And here's the second to last question. 1999, On the Ropes, your boxing documentary, nominated for an Academy Award for in the Best Documentary category. That nomination, that Oscar nomination, what does that mean to you?
Oh, it did nothing. It's really like, you know, one of the things that so that was 23 years ago, and it's kind of a cliche, but the reality is after every movie, you have to start over again. It's not like there's this endless phone calls or job offers, and then usually the job offers that come in aren't that appealing. I remember like a couple years ago, I got nominated. I had this movie Jane, and we got 7 Emmy nominations, and I got 4 myself. And I remember having breakfast, like the phone wasn't ringing, like nobody cared. Like it didn't really matter. So
damn that.
It's so funny. It's like these things you think they're going to be so like life changing, and you know it means something to my mom. Like she gets to boast to her friends, and but then that's more about her narcissism and less about my art. So it's kind of like yeah, probably not the answer you're expecting.
My last question for you. So, quote, among the best films of any artist I've ever seen, unquote. That's from Vogue magazine. Here's a question. What do you hope audiences come away with after they've seen Moonage Daydream?
Oh, this is an easy one for me to answer because David Bowie was a canvas that invited us to project onto him, and then he would reflect back to us. So the more you listen to David Bowie, it doesn't help you get closer to David Jones. You end up learning more about yourself. And the way the film is designed is very much in the spirit of Bowie. So it's mysterious, it's enigmatic, it's sexy, it's you know, all these things. But ultimately, the questions that he's positing are meant to kind of reflect back to the viewer. And I think the lesson of the film, the moral of the film is that life is short. Make every moment an adventure. Don't settle for being comfortable. You know, being comfortable is overrated. And David would, whenever he felt comfortable, he would have to change his environment because he wanted to experience as much as he can. So I think it's a film, like, I've had so many people come out of the film and I'm, tell me the next day that they're, I don't want to be whatever, but, thinking very much about their own life, not so much David, but about their own. And I think that's really kind of rare when we go to a cinema, especially given the fact that the whole kind of conceit of the thing was just to have like a sort of theme park ride through David's imagination. So I think it's really life affirming, and it's not biographical. There's not a lot of facts. There's very little information. You're not going to learn a lot about David Jones, the man, but you're definitely going to swim in David's imagination and I think leave feeling kind of like wowed by this incredible life.
You've had an experience.
I think so. I hope so.
Brett Morgan, thanks for your time. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Are you there, David?
You're aware of a deeper existence.
Are you there, David? Are you there, David?
Maybe a temporary reassurance that indeed there is no beginning, no end. And you find yourself struggling to comprehend a deep mystery.
This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade. And the papers want to know whose shirts you wear.
Ever since I was 16, I was determined we'd have the greatest adventure that only one person could ever have.
I'm an alligator. I'm a mama papa calling for you. I'm the space invader. I'll be a rock and roller bitch for you.
And how about the shoes? Are those men's shoes or women's shoes or bisexual shoes? They're shoes, silly.
Moonage Daydream is in theaters right now, globally. Up next, I catch up with some film goers at the 47th Toronto International Film Festival. Hi, what's your name?
Martine Tapascio.
And, okay, first of all, are you from Toronto?
No, I'm from Barrie.
Barrie, Ontario. You're here for TIFF?
Yes.
Have you seen any films?
Any of the films here today? No, not yet.
What are you hoping to see today on King Street?
I'm hoping to see, I guess, the actors around here, like especially for The Glass Onion.
Okay, maybe like what? Daniel Craig, I think, is in it.
Yeah, Daniel Craig, Janelle Monáe, anyone else who's here too. But I love those two the most today. So yeah.
Well said. Last question for you. For yourself, what does TIFF mean to you?
A festival where movies from, I guess, all around the world get to be shown to the people of Toronto before anybody else.
Well said. Well said. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, no problem. Thank you for the interview.
Hello, what's your name?
Jason.
Jason, where are you from?
I'm from Scarborough.
From Scarborough. And so what brings you to downtown Toronto today?
Oh, we always follow TIFF, especially when my wife influences me to go there for TIFF, right? So, and I love taking pictures and videos, so I'm here right now.
Okay, and who are you hoping to see today?
Oh, I'm hoping to see Janelle Monáe and Edward Norton and reunite again with Daniel Craig because last 2019 I saw him here also at TIFF.
in 2019. How long have you been coming to TIFF?
Oh, start 2011. Yes.
This is my 5th year. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, for us, and then 2019 has a big hype of the TIFF, and then you're planning ahead of next year, and then suddenly pandemic happened, right? So it's okay. Now we are happy we're back. So
we're back in person in 2022. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Hello, what's your name?
My name is Jing.
Hello, and what brings you to King Street on a beautiful sunny day like today?
Well, I'm here to finally get to see the cast of Knives Out, or aka Knives Out sequel, because last time I was here, I had to choose between them and Tom Hanks, so that's why I'm making up for it. That's why I'm here.
Okay, so are you hoping to see, like, Daniel Craig?
Daniel Craig, Rian Johnson, Catherine Hahn, basically anyone, everyone, hopefully they all show up.
For yourself, what does TIFF mean to you?
Just a chance to enjoy the atmosphere, trying to catch a movie, emerging filmmakers for myself personally, because I'm trying to pay attention to what's coming up in the local atmosphere, not just as much as I would love to join also the Hollywood stuff, but I'm all about the local stuff as well. So.
Well said, well said. Thank you for your time.
No worries. Enjoy TIFF.
Hi, what's your name?
My name's Kathy.
Hello, Kathy. What are you here on King Street for? Why are you here?
I am here standing in line with my daughter. I have a ticket for Causeway, the premiere, which I'm very excited to see. My daughter was not able to get a ticket, so I'm standing in the rush line for her where she's hoping to get a ticket.
Okay, so TIFF 2022, we're back, we're in person after 2 years of a pandemic. How are you feeling about that?
I am really excited. This is my first film festival. My daughter is in the film industry. She has a company that does events and premieres, and she invited me. So I love movies. I am so excited. I've already seen a number of phenomenal movies, and I have a number of phenomenal movies lined up to see in the next couple days. So before I go back to my real life, I'm just thrilled to be here.
Any movies that you've seen so far stand out to you that have made an impression on you? Anything comes to mind?
Yes, we saw Emily, phenomenal. I know a little bit about Emily Bronte's story, but learned a lot more. Very interesting. Saw The Woman King, and just powerhouse action dynamic. Saw Bros, and Bros is a phenomenal movie. You will laugh, you will cry, and I'll recommend everything I've seen so far.
Last question for you. What does TIFF mean to you?
TIFF means an opportunity for people to come together, celebrate films, and for people in the film industry to showcase their talent, a place for new emerging filmmakers to come and make a name for themselves, people that wouldn't be known to get picked up by other studios. It's just a phenomenal opportunity for anyone who loves film, works in film, or is interested in film.
Amazing. Well said. Well done. Thanks for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? Good evening and welcome. It's the opening night.
Tonight, we thank you. I am so humbled and so grateful to be here this evening.
I'm extremely excited to be here. Thank you all for coming.
By the way, for all things TIFF, all year round, tiff.net.
Hi, my name is Joanne Vanicola, and I'm an actor and a writer, and I was first on Rainbow Country with Mark Tara on discussing the massacre at Pulse Club in Orlando. I realized how important it was for our community to have a radio station, specifically for our issues, to talk about people in the LGBTQ community and to provide an outlet for our stories, to discuss our politics, culture, and give voice to the issues that matter to us, and of course our artists and the things that we do globally, and talk about culture. And without people like Mark Tara providing a space for this with a radio show like this, then we wouldn't have that voice. So support, tune in. Thank you.
And just like that, this little gay journey through Rainbow Country has come to an end. For the full 2-hour episode, head over to marktara.com where everything is connected and hit the archives banner. To keep up to date with the show, check out my socials at Mark Tara. The podcast is available on all major platforms, including Audible.com and iHeartRadio. And finally, I want to take this time to thank you for taking your time to be with me. Remember, despite all the craziness going on in the world these days, know this, that we are living in days of making our dreams come true, so believe in yourself and believe in your dreams. And the world will believe in you.
Hi, this is Police Constable Danielle Botno, also known as LGBT Cop, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.